You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy.
Paul, this week we are talking about agriculture and farmers, between farm safety and mental health and well-being with farmers. So there's something you and I don't know an awful lot about, but we're really interested to finding out and starting the conversation tonight.
Absolutely, as to say, Roisin, every day is the school day, and like I say, a big thank you. And you're very welcome to our guest Ned Kearney, who's from Farmers for Safety, which is a peer-to-peer group that supports farmers and around the whole area of making improvements in around health and safety around their farm. And Finola Colgan, who is a development worker with Mental Health Ireland for the Midlands and Louth and Meath as well. I suppose agriculture, Ned, Fiona, it's our biggest indigenous industry, and I was just reading something there very, very recently that in a report done that 27% of farmers in Ireland, their well-being was poor or below average, and that's close to nearly 3 in 10 farmers. So I can address this to both of you. Is there a crisis unfolding in farming right underneath our nose?
Let you go ahead, Ned, and because you're coming from the ground, literally.
Yeah. Yes, from our work to date, definitely find that. And if you kind of look at the dynamics of farming, even the last 30 years, how it has changed the rural community in general, farmers are becoming more and more isolated all the time in the work that they do because of technology and the structures of the farm today. Like if you go back to our father's time, there was always shared work going on within farming communities, and they were helping one another on day-to-day running of the farm. That doesn't happen now anymore. There's normally just one guy running the show all by himself. The demise of the rural pub is another reason why isolation has come into place. Going to mass on a Sunday even, that was a social occasion that's now gone. Several things like that. And we're finding farmers that we're speaking to are very much aware of this, and they can see that they are troubled by it. There's no doubt about it that it is becoming a lonely existence, and they would love to see more activities. And like what we are trying to instill into farmers from our side of things is to actually get involved in work, be it voluntary, be it social, whatever, outside of the farm. Now, a lot of guys will say, oh, we can't leave the farm because we're working hard and all that sort of thing. But again, time management with farmers wouldn't be the best compared to other industries. So they would need help in putting a structure together on their own farm individually so that they will have more time off and they can escape from the farm. Because I think it's vitally important to step back from the work you do, because see, most farms you live on it and you never leave it. So they need to just get out there and be more involved outside of farming.
Absolutely. And Finola, you do a lot of work in around mental health and well-being with farmers. You have done through Mental Health Ireland. Well, what kind of projects have you been involved with?
Well, I suppose the starting point really, in a way, about my organisation, Mental Health Ireland, it has a prime focus on mental health, well-being and recovery. And that's pretty well right across the communities, the age spans. We don't tend to focus so much on people under 18, but it's not to say they're excluded from certain projects we may run. So over the last number of years, as in 10, 15, 20 years, I've become the national lead to lead out on our organisation regarding farming and mental health. And I think it's primarily because I've actually ended up married to a farmer, and I have a husband for a farmer, or a farmer for a husband, not sure. I knew nothing about farming. It was so embarrassing my first time landing on the farm after honeymoon or whatever. Didn't know the difference between kind of, let's face it, like a heifer and a cow. I thought, they were all the outcome of it, that that it's not as attractive for the next generation, maybe, unless certain things are in place. So that's why I think projects like Farmers for Safety is very important. But what we're looking at here is very much a European issue as well. And there's a number of wonderful projects there, Farm Well, that's taking in Eastern European countries. And I'm representing Mental Health Ireland in kind of Central European. So that concern about mental health, well-being, coping, inclusivity is it's not just Ireland, it's right across the continent. And so it's about getting that message out there about self-care and about making time for yourself.
Yeah, and as a profession, it's a very, very unique one, because I'm just reading a quote here from Dr. Christian Rose. He's from the University of Reading, and he said,
Right.
Farmers face a unique set of acute and chronic stressors, including farm bureaucracy, climate conditions, animal and crop disease outbreaks, time pressures, workplace hazards, rural crime, finance, isolation, machinery breakdowns, and media criticism. So I think he's encapsulated a lot in that.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm sure Ned will be able to comment on it in a moment, but that is the reality. But they're the factors that impact on farmers and their way of life. But you could go into another area of life as well, like self-employment, business, maybe the pub industry, and there'll be a whole load of factors impacting on that as well. And it's about that unique set of factors that does impact on farmers. And I think perhaps the biggest one, obviously, at the moment is that there's a lot of weight being put on their shoulders to say about climate change and the amount of animals that they have. But, they're just one part of that program, I think, Paul. They don't necessarily have to carry that burden, but it's at times when you read the articles in the papers, there's a big emphasis put on farming. And that's, again, not just in Ireland, but right across Europe and the world. And
Ned, I'm sure you see it every day. Farmers, they do really want to play their part.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to follow up on what Finola was just saying there now, the statistics that came out on the Irish Independent Day about 10 days ago as regards, there was a study carried out by UCD in conjunction with the HSE, and it found that 25% of Irish farmers are at risk of suicide, which is an alarming figure. And the main reason given was the pressure that's been put on them at the moment as regards the climate and the climate change, and the blame that's been proportionately put on them regarding methane gases coming from animals. Like a lot of these guys have expanded in the last 8 or 10 years, and they've committed huge amounts of money and borrowed huge amount of money for this commitment, and now to be told that they have to cut back, and it's putting stress on each of them individually and collectively towards the whole issue. And this is a kind of a political debate, probably, no doubt you've probably had climate change discussions in the past, but it's something that needs to be brought to light as well. As to surely it's natural, when they put on the news on a pretty often about climate change and methane gas and all that, over next thing they show a picture of cows grazing a field and the sun shining, and it's totally like a farmer sitting down watching this, that's stress on him straight away, and there's no need to be sensationalizing this when it's not really reality. You know what I mean? It's not. They're thwarting the figures to make it look. They're targeting farmers improportionately, is our view.
Yeah, well, I wonder there. Sorry, Roisin, cutting across you, Ned. I've seen those articles written, and I kind of find that statistic quite frightening. But I'd also be questioning where the figure actually emerged from and the source of it, in the sense that, because in life what we do know is that there are various other professional groups at the risk of suicide as well. And I think to kind of bring it out and kind of say that 1 in 4 farmers are at risk of suicide, it kind of pointing at them, and it kind of defeats a lot of the messages we get out there about farming in terms of a way of life and coping and that. I'm not underestimating the fact that it's a way of life, and it's a very demanding way of life. But I just sometimes I wonder just about that particular statistic, how helpful is it in the face of farming? I'm not quite sure. Is like, would it be much better to talk about all that they're doing and coping with?
Would
and
you
that's not
say,
to walk away from the reality of
Yeah.
the stress and the pressure.
what would you say? Someone's saying now that maybe there's too much emphasis on climate change, where it's just become very political and it's a media narrative, political and media narrative. Whereas, and it's also making, as what you were saying, Ned, about the farmers, and it's always, whether you've got climate change, you've got a farmer and a cow in the field. Is that making farmers like the scapegoat, where everything's being dumped on the farmers? Whereas, I don't know. Now, I believe, what we believe and we see, but surely as nature, as farmers will see, nature has a wonderful way of repairing itself. And that's Mother Nature. And I'm sure farmers have seen that over the centuries and decades and through life. Nature has a wonderful way of just repairing itself.
Yeah. Well, I read a recent article, not able to quote it right now, but it was an interesting concept in the article that what's happening perhaps to the climate itself is rectifying itself, regulating itself, and on a kind of 100-year cycle. Now, I'm not an expert in any of that, but I think it's a thought worth considering, Roisin. And that, like, if you were to dig deep, and pardon the pun, in terms of farming and that, like, if you were to really establish, and Ned has already alluded to it, like, from what I understand, that two major concerns for farmers in terms of their stress and pressure is debt, off-farm debt, farm debt, and inheritance and succession rights.
Yes.
Say, and that, is the climate just kind of to keep, and my goodness, I do believe in the right of environment and all of that, because I'd be the first person to support it, but to kind of just pinpoint it on farming, I think is unfair and unreasonable. In a community that love their farmers, love the farming community, love their farm food, and at the end of the day, they like to eat their nice, good quality sirloin steak that's not produced from a cow standing on a slaughter house in America or Brazil.
And we want to know too that our farmers and our farm animals are happy. That's the main thing. And it's also too, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is there also a negative narrative towards the farmers and agriculture now? Because we come from a nation of farmers and we are an agriculture country.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, the whole thing. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ned.
Yeah. 40 years ago, more or less, when we joined the EU, we were, encouraged and promoted to produce, right? And we got great advice. The farming structure in Ireland is second to none anywhere on the planet. The way we can produce good food, in a very good environmentally way, right? And farmers took on this project head on, and they met it, and improve production and up the value of the product, and so on. Now to be told 40 years later that you're damaging the environment and you have to cut back. So they took on board what they were asked to do, and now they're being asked, well, no, what you did over the last 40 years is wrong. You're destroying the planet. So again, you see, Finola will know, like, that when you're dealing with the horse industry, like, and if there's a stallion you're going to use, like, they control statistics about the stallion to make it the best stallion on the planet. Your figures can be thwarted and changed, and the same is with the environment. And with that statistic I came out with there from the suicide rate and all that, whatever, all those figures can be twisted and thwarted to make a headline, and that's basically what's happening. So it's happening all the time, and they're unfairly targeting the farmer when it comes to the whole environmental issue, because they can come out with figures and statistics to prove that the farmer is doing harm to the environment, which is wrong.
I know it might be kind of adding a little bit of levity to what you're saying, but when you were talking about statistics, I hope I can rephrase this properly, but they say statistics can be like a woman in a bikini, good for what it covers up and excellent for what it exposes.
Brilliant analogy.
So sometimes statistics can be like that, and I think that's what you're saying, Ned, in your own way.
Yes,
that,
very much so.
And you know what you're really hitting at there as well, Ned, is that it's the policies of governments, of banks, of everybody. Like everybody has a part to play in when they develop these policies. Do they stop and think, what impact is this going to have? Because we're focusing on farmers. What impact does it have on farmers?
Yeah.
A lot of these places, and this is part of I think personally is part of lack of consideration, that when they are designing these policies, are they considering the mental health, the well-being? And if you go to New Zealand, where the government has an absolute policy of test-proofing everything that it measures up against well-being before a policy is implemented, it can make such a difference.
And is there, and sorry, Roisin.
No, go ahead, Paul.
And is there enough resources kind of being put to help farmers with their well-being in both your opinion and support?
Like that, Farmers for Safety is an excellent
yes, I mean it is. I thank you for saying that. To date, up to this year, very little has been done. It's being addressed now, and as I say, the reason why it's being addressed now is that there's actually a Minister for State for farm safety and mental well-being. But up to that point, there was very little being done, unless an individual was able to there's no training or coaching at any huge level associated with all this with farmers.
Yeah,
amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, cut in there in that sense, because I'm involved with Mental Health Ireland, and we've been promoting awareness and on health and safety and relating it to mental health and that triangle of safety. But then you see what happens is that might be only happening in local areas, and that's why it's important to have a policy. Like in 2017, we produced a booklet, Mental Health Ireland and Teagasc, called "Coping with the Pressures of Farming." And I approached Teagasc about doing something, and it just became a book of two halves. And it has been a publication that has never stopped giving. And our Irish Rural Network in Northern Ireland asked, could they actually copy it? They acknowledged it. They acknowledged us because they saw it as an invaluable type of a publication. So maybe, but because the government, and you have that Minister Martin Hayden, totally dedicated to farm safety, including health and well-being, that he has funded projects like what you're involved in, Ned, the Farmers for Safety, like, because it's a very personable project, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, you see, we find talking to farmers on an individual basis, they are very open and direct about farm safety and the mental well-being of their own situation. On the other hand, you put them into a group, into a meeting, a Teagasc meeting or something like that, it's a different story. They'll shut down, they won't talk about it, and they won't, it's unfortunately, they are very slow to come forward, you know what I mean? So it's very hard to broach the subject with them. And prevention is better than cure, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? It's always trying to cure a situation.
Yeah, but do you think, Ned, that because of your projects and various other EIP, Farm Connect projects and the Men's Development Network, that a lot of those barriers are breaking down? I have to agree with you. Like again, it's just a little bit of a yarn, but I had a missed call from somebody, like, let's say his name was Simon, and I'd Waterford in the background, in the brackets. And then I had a missed phone call, and I phoned him and I said, I had a missed call from you. And he said, no. I said, you did. And I chatted on, and then he said, who did you say you were? And I said, Finola Colgan, Development Officer, Mental Health Ireland. Oh, he says, thank God I don't need you. Because what did you hear? Mental Health Ireland. Yeah. And it actually turned out, I did know the person in question, and he did come from the farming community. It was just he'd gotten my number mixed up with my husband's number. Basically, and it was just interesting, like, to say, well, thank God I don't need you. And like, you're right, that anxiety is there, but I think it's breaking down, Ned.
what are the farmers themselves saying about mental health and health and well-being? So what is it they are actually looking for and what they want?
I suppose of the working environment that they're in now at this stage of life, or in society in general, it's a very isolated place. And go back forefathers right back to the Stone Age, farming was never that way, only until now. It was always a kind of a more community orientated project, whereas now it's very individual, very isolated. So we're entering a new phase, and it's how to deal with that and to encourage and to help farmers in that situation.
Yeah, I think on that as well, Ned, obviously, like my husband is farming and that, and he's into his own sector. But so pre-COVID, I'd be gone every day, and then when COVID came, I was having to work from home, and I said to my husband, I said, Tim, I said, God, imagine this is the first time that I've literally been at that stage 3 months at home all day long. And then he said to me, which would you prefer? He says, out and about having a cup of coffee or at home here with your husband. But I said, of course, be at home here with you, Tim. But that said, there are farmers, they have families coming and going. I think it's during the working hours that they're very isolated. And I again, it's just a kind of a personal thought, personal opinion. Farms are workplaces. And any workplace, I'm an employee in a workplace, but I have rules, regulations. I'm entitled to holidays, I'm entitled to sick leave or whatever. And people forget that the farmer does not have any of the backup of any of those resources. So they don't, Ned, basically. And yeah, and they don't have any colleague to say, let's go and have a cup of coffee, or we're going to the kitchen and have a cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, again, you see, if you go back to our father's time, that time, the wife did stay at home. You know what I mean? Now the wife is off out doing a career.
Gallivanting, go on.
Yeah, but fair play to her. You know what I mean?
That's my husband says to me anyway. You're gallivanting.
So they are spending a lot of time on their own. So they do but you can't stop progress either, and it's the way it is. But they should now, what you're saying there now, which is quite correct, they do now need to bring time management into their lives and structure their day so that when their wife or partner comes home or their kids come home from school, that their day's work is done as well, so that they can then have time. And because they're self-employed and they're working at home on their farm, the time structure can be quite weak. And even if there were a program of training brought in that would help them in that situation. And I mentioned earlier that they need, if they had an outside project, whatever it is, social or voluntary or whatever, that they would structure their day, and their time management would be far more efficient, because they knew they had to get done for 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening to get out to go at that project.
Yeah.
So all that.
Yeah, but I can nearly kind of sense some farmers wanting to throw cold water on that, in the sense that what do you do at the calving season? What do you do at the lambing season? You can't. But what I think is really important, Ed, is that when they have to work and they have to put in those long hours, that they should give themselves pay back the time. And we ran again with Farmers for Safety just at the weekend gone by, and Minister Martin Hayden launched it for us. We came up with the idea of the winter hour, make that winter hour your hour for self-care. And just to encourage people, farmers, to think, I have that extra hour. And they tend to work with the light, so they might kind of pack it in a bit earlier. And of course, there'll be less kind of animal births and whatnot in kind of at this time of the year as such. And to encourage them then to use that time efficiently for themselves, and to be and as we know, they'll call in the vet quicker than they'll go to their own GP.
Yeah, very much so. Very much. Yeah, totally agree with all that. It needs to, they do need time out, time away.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
build that in. Yeah, and maybe family members need to kind of remind them, like, you know, the family members are away working and whatever, and like they're getting on with their lives, just to kind of maybe set that tone as well, and try and encourage their family member that's farming to get out and socialize a bit more. And I know, like, you big organizations like Mark and the Farmer, but for the farmer that mightn't have missed out on that opportunity, to encourage them to get involved.
Yeah, I like if you go to Alma and Agri Kids, like,
yes,
an awful lot of work could be done at that level, even at primary school level, where kids could encourage their parents on the farm to become more efficient as regards time management, and to be able to finish their day's work and come away from the farm or spend time with their family.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, from our work to date, I can definitely say that the whole mental well-being is so related to farm safety and accidents or prevention of accidents on the farm.
Yes.
Like if you're mentally right and your well-being and you're fit and you're healthy and you're positive about life, the accidents won't as much.
Exactly. Yeah. And when we're talking off air, Ned, you said yes, you've got funding now for Farmers for Safety, and it's really great positive things, doing super work. But around farm safety and things like that, you said there are a lot of things that are still very, very loose.
Yes, well, as regards the funding, first of all, the funding is on hold at the moment. We're awaiting confirmation if it goes ahead next year or not. It was originally run as a 9-month project, and that now has come to an end. It was very rushed, but very informative. Learned a whole lot of things, better from Finola and people like that. So we're actually on hold at the moment. We don't know whether we're going ahead with the Farm for Safety next year or not. Fingers crossed we will, but maybe not. Sorry, the second part of your question was there, sorry.
As regards farm safety, there are a lot of things still that are very, very loose. You know, you're telling us some stuff here, which is like, wow.
Yeah, as regards farms, as regards farm safety, there is no protocol associated with entering a farm or working on a farm. It's you're left to your own devices, really. There is the only thing that's there at the moment is the safety statement that you have to produce every time you have a board B inspection. But that's only a paper exercise. There's no training worth talking about put into any farm implement or use it.
But would Teagasc provides a certain element. I know it might be perfect, but it's to acknowledge efforts that are being made to.
I know, I suppose there is efforts being made, but they're not having an effect on the ground, is the best way I put it. And based on the surveys we've done with farmers, that would confirm that thought.
But the Health and Safety Authority done it. They've done a lot as well, and I know we might think about the Health and Safety Authority in relation to farming, but they have been quite proactive in relation to.
They have and they haven't, but again, they are very much restricted by funding also. We had a farm talk there about a month ago in Cork, and we had a farm HSA inspector who came on board, and we got a very informative talk now. In fairness to the guy, he was very, very good. But his area is from Dublin to Galway South. Wow. And the other guy involved with farm safety is from Dublin to Galway North, and that's it. Now, again, all they can physically do, they do visit farms from time to time. They do off-the-cuff inspections. They have the legislation is in place. They have the authority to walk onto any farm at any time. But 99% of their work is based on going out to an incident that has occurred, either a fatality or an injury or whatever, and investigating that. They don't have the resources.
Yeah,
exactly. They're basically attending farms after the stable doors open and the horse is bolted.
Yeah,
that's it. I'm afraid.
But still, I think we need to have kind of a level of optimism and hope, though, that there are agencies out there, and that despite maybe restrictions in funding, and limitations like that, there's concerted efforts being made to be aware of farm safety. But the biggest thing then that contributes to that, we're kind of back in our circle, is the stress that a farmer and rushing and maybe forgetting to maybe put the lights on or to attach the hitch to something, or maybe climbing on a ladder without checking if it's secure, because they're in a hurry. And like any of us can be guilty of that, but it's more dangerous on the farm.
And you mentioned earlier there as well, it's the workload at a certain time of the year. Like if you're a builder now, for example, you can work 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, whatever, and you do so much day in, day out, and there's no peaks or troughs. You're actually working on a level all the time. Whereas when it comes to the farm, it's weather related, it's season related, and it's when the pressure comes on and the stress levels are high that mistakes happen and injuries occur and fatalities and what have you. So again, you see, it's very hard to monitor that and to help and coordinate that going forward. It's not an easy task.
I'm not sure if it's relevant to, like, when you're talking about stress and that, but I've had some interesting conversations with wives of farmers and the stress that they can feel in relation to perhaps their husband's poor health, let it be physical or mental, and trying to carry, keep the show on the road, keep the paperwork going, and it becomes a kind of in that situation, then it becomes kind of like a conglomerate of kind of negativity in that, and stressful, and it impacts in relationships. Then it's not just on the physical side, and trying to keep things balanced, I think, as well, Ned. I don't know whether you've come across that in your, your peer-to-peer education.
Yeah, again, it's down to time management, taking time out, getting away from the farm, all that sort of thing, is. And again, don't get me wrong, not all farmers are at this, stressful 7 days a week working all over. A lot of the guys and girls have it sorted, have it, worked out very efficiently and very, like, for example, like, you're coming to on the dairy industry now at the moment, they're coming to the end of their milking season. So they're going to take the next 2.5 months off from milking.
Barbados, Ned.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have a complete break, which is, again, an efficient farmer is doing that and doing it correctly and doing it rightly, and he'll have more time off. Okay, the days will be shorter, but he'll have more time, and then he'll be ready to go again in the new season. The spring starts. The guys I was talking about earlier, the guys who don't have that structure and proper management put in place, and they need to be advised and helped and coaxed along to.
I think maybe encouraged, like, because again, I kind of seen from my own experience at home that there can be the benefits of being your own boss as well in farming, and you can kind of down tools, go in and have your cup of tea or have your cup of coffee, and sometimes what we might count inefficiency might be their way of being efficient with themselves, and that if we try to regularize the farmer and how he manages his day, might put another extra pressure on him, saying, I'm not using my time well. But I appreciate what you're saying, but I think we need to be flexible in how we view that as well, Ned.
No doubt.
I just see like at times at home.
Again, like when you think about it, like, farming and walking the land and being out in the countryside, people are all over the planet would crave to have that sort of environment to work in, and it's fantastic. I mean, to be bringing cows in there in the morning and the sun rising and all the sort of thing, whatever, like, you couldn't exactly. You couldn't be more like. But unfortunately, like, again, a lot of people do see that, but then if you don't, you know what I mean? And it's trying to make them realize that what you are doing, what you are working at, it's a fabulous place to be working.
But it has massive challenges but it's very much, I know it depends on the nature of the farming and the outputs, but like farming is very much family driven, and if the family don't cooperate in that delivering that farming outcomes and the outputs, it can be quite difficult then, like if there's lack of cooperation. I know sometimes kids, oh, not again, kind of thing, but they don't realize the value of being growing up in a farm till they actually leave the farm. Basically, that they've been given a good training for life.
Absolutely.
And it's the work ethic too, that when you come from a farming background, it's that work ethic that you have. And it's how you value the land and how you value animals and how you value working and also community. Because when you think about farming contributes so much to the economy locally, regionally, and nationally.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that is something, are we as a society, outside the farming community, are we as a society, are we undervaluing farmers and agriculture in this country now?
Well, if you look at the kind of where we were chatting earlier on about the criticism towards climate change and that, or, you know, policies say like grow trees and not cattle, like, but who wants to drive through, like, we're not Finland, we're not Norway, we're not a pine growing country. Like, why would we want to transform our beautiful fields and our landscape into, like, there's a place for trees and that, but you know, and that can be obviously soul destroying for a community, and that their, you know, their environment has changed dramatically as well. But I think whether you're in Africa or Ireland or anywhere Central Europe, like, farming is a very special occupation. It's a very professional business as well. It's becoming more and more of that. And you know, who kept us going during COVID? Farmers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, you know, policy, government policy, processes policy and all that rubber is you know, in a way is kind of damaging the whole family farm ethos that we have, because like the statistic came out there recently, there's 140,000 farmers in Ireland at the moment, and 40 of those are full-time farmers. So you have 100,000 in part-time farmers. Okay. So like now, if you go back to even before we joined the EU, you probably had 500,000 farmers at that point. So I'm not too sure the figure now. I don't know, but like it's that sort of a that globalization that's come into the whole scene as well is isolating the industry slightly, I think. Now again, you know, if policy was put in place as regards holding on to the family farm rather than having these big ranches, but again, you know, the Glanbias of the world want these big ranches so that they can process the milk far more efficiently and all that rubber. So you know, smaller farmers are getting out of farming really, which is disappointing to see.
Because I'm sure I was reading in an article in the Farmers Independent. It says, and this must be contributing to farmers' mental health and their own sort of self-esteem as well. Farmers who were enticed to farmers who were enticed by grants to plant willow for biomass market say they have lost millions of euros.
I saw that article,
and urge caution over renewable energy schemes. I mean, so all this changing of legislation, changing of what farmers are growing, of the milk quotas, the beef quotas, grow trees, and getting blamed for the climate change, it must be having such a negative impact on farmers, and so it's affecting their health and well-being.
But I wonder, how is it like I live in a farming community, and you know, you'd be having your conversations, but a lot of the times though the conversations are not necessarily about the negativity that's out there. You tend to find the conversations around the cost of living.
Yes.
Basically, like, and the cost of running the farm, the cost of fertilizer. Like, I just heard this all summer long. This time last year, guys were saying I paid X amount per ton, and now now we're paying, and now of course, like, you know, kind of you know, producing fertilizers, all of that, it's just the cost has just gone up enormously. So like, farmers aren't necessarily talking about the climate change or pushing that blame to it's the media, and it gives the media something to talk about, doesn't it?
And the political agenda.
People, dare I say, I could be shot for it, but city people, and big percentage, is it 1/5 of our population and 1 point something million live in Dublin. Now, and a lot of these people will have at some point come from rural Ireland, their grandparents or their parents, sons and daughters going to work in Dublin, like, you know, and it's a kind of the city life versus the country life at the end of the day, the town mouse and the city mouse kind of thing, Roisin. Yeah.
And when you think about it too, is we're living in a cost of living crisis. We don't produce enough of our own food and food security. So climate change is pushed to the highest level in the media sensationalism of their headlines.
Yeah.
And it's taken, well, people are really, what really people are talking about is the cost of living crisis and everything else, which could be manageable if the government and legislations listen to the people of Ireland, listen to what the farmers need to ensure that we have food safety, that we are self-reliant on growing our own food where possible. So, you know, what is it, where are we at having food safety? I know, Ned, you were saying off air that it's not sometimes financially viable to the farmer to actually grow our own food and produce. But really then, what are you hearing on the ground? Because surely the government should be listening to the farmers and the consumers that we want to buy Irish. Like in the 80s, guaranteed Irish, but it seems to be like import, where we should be self-sufficient.
Yeah, well, we've seen the protests outside Tesco's and that, haven't we? Like, you know, where they're not getting a great price for their produce and that as well. But it's also important to remember that cost of living has a major impact on farming as well, and not just alone in terms of the home and the domestic side of things, but also in terms of you know, how they manage their land and, you know, maybe medicines for animals that are not well, calling in the vet, etc. Sorry, Ned, I cut across you there.
No. I don't entirely agree with the comment that was made there regarding not being sufficient in food. I think we are more than self-sufficient in food. It just depends on the product that we are producing. And like the farmer is a very wise individual. He knows exactly what the best thing to produce to get the maximum profit from. Now, if the weather doesn't allow, or the consumer can buy it cheaper from abroad, that's what they're going to do. And that's all been part of the EU at the end of the day, really. You know what I mean? If we want to become a national state and produce our own stuff, and you know what I mean? So it, like, you know, trade is important in and out of this country. So like, we export what we produce very well, and we import the products that we can't produce efficiently here, or climate doesn't allow. But I think overall, our utilization of land, bar the overuse of forestry, I totally agree with Finola there that there's too much forestry being put into this country for no reason, really, because we have a very natural growing climate here to produce good food.
Yeah. And, you know, and that, like, that farmers are encouraged to do it. Say, but again, it's become very commercial, hasn't it? Where, you know, big farmers and and primarily around Dublin and that, potato growing and cabbage and all of that.
Up by Swords and Lusk and all that area.
There's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah.
Say, but they're a major, like, part of our economy, but sometimes that's a forgotten part, I think, of our economy, because maybe it's a bit like not seeing the wood for the trees, because farmers are there, and there's farm communities on the edge of a village, of a town, of an urban town. Like, they're only ever so many miles out the road, aren't they?
Yeah. And you know, what are you hearing, Ned, from the farmers? What are you hearing is what they want, and what legislation they want it to be brought in for farm safety? So what is the conversations on the ground?
Well, again, relate back to our surveys. What the guys are mostly coming back with is creating awareness, and the subject being spoken about an awful lot more there, and certain we'll say, be it implement some machinery, or certain age groups training to be provided for. I mentioned earlier there about the under 16s, the 16-year-olds being able to go driving a tractor or the quad bike, and also the whole awareness thing they find very, because again from our project that we did a second survey, and they came back and they have become much more aware of farm safety from dealing with us. Now we dealt with a specific number of farmers all through the summer months, and sending out WhatsApps, trying to create a body to body system where they, if they were going to doing a dangerous project on the farm, that they would contact one another, so that if anything happened and there was no contact made back, that the second guy was aware that there was something amiss here, so he made a call and that announced that he was going to go to his farm to see was everything okay. So all that sort of thing got very positive views back from farmers. So I suppose at the end of the day, a certain amount of training and advice, and also keep making guys aware of different issues all the time. Keep reminding them that products out there or subjects out there and of serious accidents that could be prevented.
Yeah, I heard a feedback on one particular question about exploring mental health and farming, and would you talk about it, and would you want to learn more? I know I'm kind of summarizing, but I just thought the comment was very interesting. One farmer responded that he wanted to understand and know more about mental health because he was much more aware of his children's mental health and the stresses that were on them. And sadly, because we know it's a reality that there's a percentage of young people dying by suicide in our communities, and he wanted to know that his family, his children could talk about how they were feeling. So it was interesting that he was, once again, like he was seeing it from the perspective of care, but how much more would it be for him to look after his own mental health as well? It's all part of the giving of the farmer, isn't it?
Mm. And when you think about farmers, because like we're not a farming channel, so we the ordinary people need to understand farmers' perspective more, I think, as a nation. That's just my opinion. Do you think do we as a nation really appreciate and value our farmers in Ireland the way we used to?
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Yes, I would say overall, yes. But a perfect example, now you're going back nearly 20 years ago now, was when the foot and mouth was an issue in Ireland. Like, it was absolutely amazing that time how the whole country got behind farmers that time and literally shut down overnight. That was from being from a farm, it actually made the hair stand in the back of your neck that kind of loyalty was given to farmers at that point in time. I remember talking to an aunt of mine living in Dublin, and she wasn't even going outside the door because she was scared she might spread the foot and mouth, which was a huge, like, a lady walking around Dublin, what harm is she going to do to a farmer down in Cork? But she was that much aware of it, which was fantastic. That whole scenario was absolutely amazing. But at that point in time, you could probably safely say that everyone in Ireland at that point in time was only one generation away from a farm.
Yeah.
Now we've gone on 20 years and a second generation has come on board. There's been an influx of immigration into the country, and so that now you've got a different psyche that's out there. But overall, I would say it's still very positive towards farmers.
That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. No, but and why wouldn't it be any more than maybe any other member of the business community or that and then kids going to school, like invariably they'll be coming from farms and mixing as well and going out to visit their friends. Like there's a cultural thing there as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
That kind of keeps it going, Roisin.
It's part of our heritage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Farming is a massive part of our heritage.
Yeah.
And Finola, you're a lady of many talents.
Oof.
You've also written a book.
Yeah, well, that was kind of, I kind of set myself a challenge there, Paul. Some years ago, I was really keen. I just wanted to write a book, and I had something else in mind. And then I was looking at home, and we're on the farm, and the one person all the time coming into our farm was vets, and I said, oh, like, how familiar are they with the law and that? And I did a bit of research to discover that there was no book like that available, and so I kind of thought it was something I'd do in a matter of months, but anyway, I learned that it takes time to write a book. And so I eventually, with a bit of guidance in that, I came up with the idea of doing veterinary law and practice in Ireland. And Lisa Geraghty, she took on to, to support me with it and contribute. And I think probably one of the interesting things, I know maybe I might be putting myself a bit on a pedestal, but like, it's 100 years ago since the first female vet was actually recognised as a female vet, Aileen Isabel Kosh, and she's actually from Roscommon, and she was not recognised by what was then the Veterinary Council because she was a female, but then there was new laws brought in about employment rights and discrimination, and that was pre-Republic, pre-1922 and everything. So 100 years later, myself and Lisa put a little show on the road as well. And the thing we found again, and I think maybe like that, like while we have veterinary law and practice, it might seem like it's for vets, but in actual fact, it's a useful book for any farmer to know kind of what way the law is impacting as well. And Henry Abbott, like a former High Court judge, retired now in senior counsel, his foreword for me was very telling, because he wrote about what it was like for him growing up on the farm with his parents, and that how much he loved reading the Farmer's Journal more than anything else. So, and it's back to what Roisin is saying, like, farming is in people's bloods, no matter where they go in life or what they achieve afterwards. Like that idea of going back to the land and being able to have it as, well, obviously for some, they don't have the pleasure of just as a hobby farmer, but for some it can be that, and that's important as well, I think, Paul. So thanks for that acknowledgement.
Just to wrap up the show, because we're starting to run out of time. If I could ask the two of you, what would be your three messages to, let's say, 1, the government, 2, the farmers, and 3, the general public? So we'll start off with you, Ned.
Right. The government, I am very confident, after being speaking to Martin Hayden during the course of the last 9 months, that we are in a very positive position there as regards specifically farm safety and mental well-being. I think things will happen. Now again, unfortunately, there's a new kind of coalition mix-up coming up in the next month or 2, so he could be moved from that position and we could be starting from scratch all over again, but hopefully that's
fingers crossed.
So exactly, yeah.
Well, the important thing is he set the marker, though, Ned. He set the marker. It's very hard to move away from the foundation.
And hopefully it will continue. Yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it will continue, because that definitely needed to happen, and it's great it has happened. As regards the farmers themselves, they need to open up a bit more, be a bit more, and again, I'm not talking about the majority, I'm talking about the minority, but be a bit more positive about life, appreciate what they really do have, because they do have a lot. Their workplace, their lifestyle, it's within their own surroundings to actually improve if they need improving, because it's there for them to do. Hopefully we can get them to realize that that's what can happen. What was the third point? Sorry.
To the public, to the general public.
Again, take the media and the climate change and all that with a pinch of salt. It's my own personal thought on the whole climate thing is that there was some article I wrote, I read a good few years ago or whatever, that like back in the 1400s they had vineyards in the south of England. So like the climate had warmed up that much. So is it a natural phenomenon that's happening now that the planet warms up, cools down, warms up, cools down? You know, because if you see it in pictures of Victorian times in London, there was skiing on the Thames, for example. You know what I mean? So that was a cooling down process. So they're scaring us a lot, the public in general, about the whole thing. Just, you know, take a broader view on life and farming in general.
And Mother Nature always looks after her land.
You're a firm believer in that. Yeah. I couldn't but help think there, Ned, when you were saying about farming that, but I couldn't but help kind of think maybe we need to start a campaign, Love Your Farmer Day. Yeah, literally. Yeah. And, you know, I know there's lots of positivity and lots of, you know, excellent events, and many organizations like the IFA, like Chagas, you know, and we are very fortunate. Like I was doing a comparison for the Erasmus project I'm on, Farm Resilience, in that kind of Central European based one. And we all had to do up a report. And I kind of realized, you know what, we are doing a lot for our farming community. And at the end of the day too, it's up to the farmer themselves to kind of get in there and just say, you know, maybe to learn how to treat himself as well, you know, like a bit like the Laurier lad, because he's worth it. Yeah. But don't forget, we've female farmers as well that are out there, and like I have a daughter that farms as well, and you'd be kind of conscious of the way of life that, no, it's every bit as challenging for a female to be a farmer as it is for a man, in that, you know, if they've got jobs to do, as they say, and maybe they can't just quit at 6 o'clock or whatever. Say, so yeah, no, I think and again, for anybody, like in terms of policy and that, just be mindful to just factor in and say, what are the consequences of this policy that we're creating for farmers? Like, is it putting them under more stress and strain? Is there an easier way to manage it and still be like to comply as well? I think is really important. And I know, like, again, I think the Farmers for Safety has been quite a unique project in getting out farmers to farmers, having a chat, because who knows it better. And then you have like Farm Connect, and you have Embrace, supporting farmers in crisis. Like, there is a lot of help out there, and people are reaching out, and that we need to recognize that and acknowledge that. And I know, like, it's kind of a sales point, but we developed that farm resilience page on our website, Mental Health Ireland, and lots of very useful information on there as well. Even like the farmer himself mightn't bother to look at it, but maybe a family member will, where to get help and where to get support.
And Mental Health Ireland's website, it's a super website. There are resources on it.
Thanks, Paul.
Our top class.
Yeah, I have lots of chapters on the way to you, Paul. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think, Finola, you were involved in there was a leaflet came out there only just last week with Farmers for Safety. Yeah. I mean, if that could be put through every door of every farmer in Ireland tomorrow.
Thanks, Ned.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a very simple, a very easy thing to look at and to have it somewhere, because hopefully you'd never need it, but it's there if you want it. I think it's a brilliant piece of
our thinking behind it, Ned, and we appreciated getting your feedback, and myself and Eve, what we're thinking is, you walk into a farmyard and you see these farm safety notices, and we kind of thought, well, why not have one up there for your well-being? And our idea was then, like, if somebody was under stress, there was a QR code and you could phone a number. So it mightn't even be the farmer, it might be the farmer's a family member or somebody. And it wasn't just about mental health, it was about maybe a farm accident or an electrical fault, because all these things can cause stress. Yeah, so we're hoping we may get some sponsorship to get that. Yeah, it would be brilliant to get that into every home now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We'll send you copies, guys. Yeah,
do. And Finola, what would your third point be to the public? What was your third about farmers and of the farming community?
You see, Roisin, before I got a husband for a farmer for a husband, I was the public. Yeah, I was the public, and I suppose the biggest kind of shock for me in a way was suddenly to be in a country. You went out the door at night, like you just went out your back door, your front door. It was dark, and no houses. And then, like, my sisters and whoever to be visiting, say, "You're lonely here." And I used to think, no, I'm not lonely. And then I used to, when I'd be visiting them, I say, oh my God, like, they've got such a busy life. But it's for the public, I think, to understand that farming is a unique way of life. It's special. The struggles for farmers may be a bit different from struggles that other people have because of the environment in which they live. But we all carry struggles. We all have mental health. We all need to look after our well-being, whether we're a farmer or a solicitor or a banker or a business person. And, but it's just what contributes to undermining the mental health of farming is what we're really focused on, and what farmers themselves and how the public can support that as well, I think, Roisin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And too, I remember all my life I've always said, if you want to know what the weather's like, ask the farmer, because farmers all know about either the bushes or the berries. They know by the land if you're going to have a harsh winter or good summer. So you always used to ask the farmers, us city folk, well, what's the weather going to be like? Because farmers are very connected to the land and nature.
And they know about it as well, Roisin. And I see it kind of again coming up in the next generation. They're very innovative and creative about problem solving. And if they could think about their own struggles, so they go out and they see a problem with a tractor or a piece of machinery, they'll find a way of sorting it out. So it's like, you do your NCT for your car, for your tractor. Why not do your NCT for your own well-being, your body, both physically and mentally, and give yourself that space?
Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I came on here and I said, God, know nothing about farming. And I thought, God, I won't have anything to say. Yes. And I wanted to do a program. Me and Paul sat down and said, God, Paul, we have to do something about farming, especially with everything. And I said, but I know nothing. And Paul said, Roisin, don't need to. We'll get the information. But I know that I've really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much,
Ned.
Very,
very educational. Learned a lot.
Yeah, no, but you generated that conversation, and you might count yourself the public, but if the public talk and think and chat, and chat to guys like Ned, like myself, just get that insight and don't be thinking it's something very different.
No,
farming. No,
it's a business. It's a business like all businesses, but it's one of the businesses that really contribute locally, regional and nationally,
and internationally,
as well.
And don't forget as well, Roisin, many very, very, very many successful people, both nationally and internationally in the world, they've come from farming backgrounds.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, it is a fantastic lifestyle.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And again, it's to, from our point of view, it's to get farmers even to realize that what they're at is actually a very, very good place to be.
Yeah, they're blessed to live off the land and live on the land and live with that fresh air and that freedom of the land.
And all the hardship that goes with that.
Oh, yeah.
Keep the reality check in there.
Well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have you both on together and individually again on different panels of discussions. And if there's anything that you would like us to discuss or start a conversation on, please do get in touch with us, because Paul and I would like to, don't we, Paul? We really want to keep this conversation going.
The door will always be open.
Yeah. The stable door, I take it, Paul.
Stable door, exactly.
Because I really would love, because we were going to talk, because you both, Ned, you come from a dairy farm, and now you're into horse breeding and a stud. And Finola, you come from a stud, so maybe we'll do a program about the economy and the
fillies and mares and stallions, and then you'll get an audience. Yeah.
Finola, just ending on what did you say? Because I love this one, and about mares being the closest to women.
Oh yeah. Well, I heard a vet saying this one time about a brood mare, and she was in foal, and he just happened to pass the comment that the brood mare is very comparable to the female in terms of, I didn't kind of go into it, to be honest with you. I thought, okay, 2 legs are good, 4 legs are bad, but there you go.
And Ned, can you tell us that story that you said off air about the foal? One was a spoiled little brat. I think that's lovely.
It's just some mares can be very strict on their foals, and when it comes to feeding time, the foal has to wait and not ask for feed so that the mare can feed herself. But we have one particular mare, and at the end of the day, she's just a big softie, and she allows the foal to, from day one, do whatever to her, jump on her back, move around, get fed when it wants to be fed and all that, whatever. But when it comes to when we wean that foal then from that mare, we end up trying to deal with a spoiled child, trying to train it, coax it along. So they all have their own personalities, and they're amazing animals to work with in that sense, because they are so personal in their own. No mare is the same. You might look at a group of horses out in the field, but they're all individual.
Yeah.
They're all drawn.
Lovely story, Ned. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure, hasn't it, Paul?
Absolutely, and thanks a million for taking the time to talk to us here on Irish Political Roundup. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, but also thanks for thinking of us as well, Paul, and putting it out there in this format. Really appreciate it as well. Yeah, thank you, and Roisin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed.
Okay.